It's about the judiciary. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon to you, Nigeria. Good afternoon, Kenya, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire. Good afternoon to you, Lesotho, Eritrea. Good afternoon, Somalia, Swaziland. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Thami Ngubeni. This is where you get the African perspective. It's where we meet to look at the latest in news, sport and business. It's gone exactly 6 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Thank you to Jwalane Tulongwape who gave us the news at the top of the hour. Store for you a bit later on today. We'll be joined by Figile Lengwati with your latest sporting update and Nosipho Zuma from the economic desk. Do continue to engage with us on the various social media platforms. You'll find us at Channel Africa 1 on X, Instagram and YouTube. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. If you have any stories that you believe would be of interest to our listeners, both on the African continent and in the diaspora, do send us your story leads to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. That's newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Or alternatively, you can call us on +27 11 714 4459.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
We begin here this afternoon with a look at economic growth on the South African soil. The International Monetary Fund has projected that economic growth will slow to 3.8% in sub-Saharan Africa this year, and this is in line with a softer global outlook. It has slashed its global growth forecast to 2.8% this year, saying the abrupt increase in tariffs and increase in policy uncertainty were the major drivers of the economic outlook. Dimakatso Lishoro filed this report.
There is no region in the world that will be left untainted by the fallout from the U.S. tariffs policy that is expected to slow global trade this year. The International Monetary Fund says Africa's economic growth will also be impacted as countries reel from the uncertainty brought by the constantly changing policy. The global economy is entering a new era as the global economic system that has operated for the last 80 years is being reset. IMF's chief economist Pierre-Olivier Gorinches noted.
Regional growth in sub-Saharan Africa improved significantly last year to 4%, and it will ease in 2025. And this is in line with a softer global outlook. And so we are seeing the same forces at play in the region as we are seeing more globally, and a downturn in a downward revision in our projection that is of the similar magnitude at about 0.4 percentage point.
Africa's advantage is the demographic dividend coming from having a young population. But are African countries able to leverage this and channel it towards economic growth? IMF's Denise Egan explains.
The answer there, first and foremost, depends on the structural reforms, the investment that's necessary on healthcare, on education, on human capital more generally, and also international cooperation.
Gorinches says if sustained, the increasing trade tensions and uncertainty will slow global economic growth significantly.
Under these reference forecasts, global growth will reach 2.8% this year and 3% next year, a cumulative downgrade of about 0.8 percentage point relative to our January 2025 WEO update. Under an alternative path that excludes the April tariff announcements, global growth would have seen only a modest downgrade to 3.2% this year. An escalation of trade tensions would further depress growth. Financial conditions could also tighten as markets react negatively to diminished growth prospects and increased uncertainty.
Concerns about the inflationary impact of the tariffs persists, and Gorincha says central banks will have to respond by increasing interest rates where necessary.
Monetary policy credibility will be key, especially where inflation expectations might de-anchor, and central bank independence remains a cornerstone. Many fiscal authorities will face new spending needs to bolster defense spending or to offset the trade dislocations likely to come. Some of the poorest countries, also hit with reduced official aid, could experience that distress. Yet debt levels are still elevated, and most countries still need to rebuild fiscal space, including by implementing structural reforms.
The IMF also released the latest financial stability report. This report gives a comprehensive picture of the financial system's performance. The report comes as major indices across the world have come under pressure, losing ground mostly due to the U.S. trade policy. IMF financial counselor Tobias Adrian says increasing levels of uncertainty have triggered a sell-off in equity markets. This has seen increased global financial stability risks on the back of heightened economic policy uncertainty.
Market volatility has increased. We have seen some degree of deleveraging, but market functioning has been sound so far. So with higher volatility, we would expect asset prices to come down. But the functioning of how those asset prices adjusted has been very orderly to date.
Even with the current turbulence, emerging market currencies and capital flows remain steady, pointing to the resilience of these economies. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakatsole Shoro in Johannesburg.
It is exactly 12 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time as we move this development further. As we have heard and as we've been focusing on, the International Monetary Fund has once again downgraded South Africa's economic outlook, trimming its 2025 growth forecast by 0.5 percentage points to just 1%. The revised figures come from the IMF's April update to its World Economic Outlook that was released on Tuesday. This is amid rising global uncertainty driven by escalating trade tensions initiated by the United States. The IMF warns that the ripple effect of the U.S. tariff war will be widespread, with no economy left untouched. To break this down further, we joined this afternoon by independent economic analyst, Professor Bonke Dumisa. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Yes, good afternoon to you and your listeners, wherever they are in the world. I want to start, before you ask me any question, I want to start by reassuring your listeners, wherever they are in the world, that what we heard from the IMF is not surprising. It was the position of the South African Reserve Bank that when many of us expected a repo rate cut earlier on in March, they said no, they're not going to cut it. They kept it unchanged because they were saying all the Trump things are pointing to one thing, that there will be global uncertainty. However, that's why I wanted to say this before you ask me other questions. However, we must note that the tone from President Donald Trump of the USA has significantly changed since those early days of March, or even in April. I mean, I was listening to him yesterday saying that they are really serious about negotiating with China so that the bizarre big tariff increase of 145% may be negotiated to the benefit of both countries. When he was imposing all this, what he called the reciprocal tariffs, he was sure that it was really going to benefit America, but he now realizes that it's not happening that way. So this global uncertainty called by his tariff wars, I don't think it's going to last that long. And the amount of global jitters about this may start going down, and it's not going to go back to normal as we knew it before he was inaugurated, but they may be exaggerated from now onwards. I'm listening.
So thank you very much for that context, Professor. So you are saying that this is likely to be short-lived because we are starting to see and have seen an about turn from the United States. How then would the International Monetary Fund respond to that, especially because already the economic outlook and the growth forecast has been downgraded? What is their then likely response to a downturn of this particular tariff war?
One thing which is very important about the IMF in particular when they make projections, because they don't call them predictions, about the economic growth rates, is they don't feel that they are tied to those. I've seen situations where they've changed their projections at least 3 times in a year. So, and when you look at the extent of those projections, you can see that they are well reasoned within the confines of the global situation at that particular point in time. So when they did these revisions, they were considering the time when the American president had really come gung-ho on this tariff thing, saying that is for the best of America. And in fact, it is for that reason that even came up with tariffs for places which don't have any human beings living there. But that's a discussion for another time.
It certainly is for another time, Prof. Let me ask you, we've been focusing a lot on global issues impacting the projections made by the IMF. But perhaps let's look inward. Let's look at the domestic issues and the domestic environment within South Africa that may have added to this downgrade.
Not necessarily, but it did feature because we cannot downplay what is happening in South Africa. And the reason why I actually asked you to say something before you ask me questions is because the manner in which it was introduced, and I do not blame you, in many media platforms they've done that. People were looking at South Africa, the projection was 1.5%, and now it has been revised downwards to 1%. But what we're not taking into consideration is that the projection for a big country which has been leading in the motor car industry, Germany, the projections for their economic growth rate this year is now 0.00. So it means absolutely no economic growth rate for Germany. Even for the United States, which is triggering all these things, their projection is at 1.8%. So the countries which look as if they are not affected by this are only a few countries like India, which is at 6%. Sure, that's a very high figure.
And
why things are bad for everyone.
And why is that? And maybe if you could also touch on perhaps the performance of some of the other BRICS countries and other countries on the African continent. I think let's put this into perspective.
Yes. I say India is at 6%, but many other countries are far lower than that. Let me start before coming to the BRICS countries. When you look at the other European countries, they're all at below 1%. Italy 0.6%, etc. And the other BRICS countries, I don't have the figures right in front of me as it is now, but they are not really performing significantly higher than South Africa. And China is still up, but not as up as it was all along. So it's affecting everyone, and the message has been sent home. to President Donald Trump that this is not going to benefit everyone. In fact, in economics, it's normally said that no one wins a trade war. And that's the fact with these tariffs.
And then maybe Trump is starting to see that. But all of this, as in any other war, is about strategy, right? You know when to retreat and when to charge forward. And it seems like that's exactly what Trump has been doing.
And the good news for South Africans as it is now, despite, but this happened before this announcement by the IMF. When you look at the currency rates today, they are at their strongest in more than 2 weeks. That tells you something. We've seen the gold going up and up and up. I mean, it was at over $3,400 yesterday. And you must remember that when the price of gold goes up, then it actually increases the current foreign currency inflows into South Africa, even though it's reduced now. But the strengthening of the rand tells you then that we're not suffering the West really because of this. Because at one stage it looked like there was something very personal. Actually, now I'm saying in this suit, yes, there is something personal about this when it comes to South Africa, but not as worse as some of our people in South Africa have thought it was going to be the worst for South Africa. So let us really be stronger. Things are not going to be as worse as we think. Well, but unfortunately, an economic growth rate of 1%, if ever it is realized and it does not improve, is bad. Is bad because for us to have a viable economy, the economic growth rate must be higher than the population growth rate. But for the number of years up to now, the economic growth rate is significantly lower than the population growth rate. And that's why we are having this serious unemployment problem in South Africa.
Professor, thank you so much for putting all of that into perspective for us this afternoon. Much appreciated. He is independent economic analyst, Professor Bonke Dumisa, saying, look, other countries, Europe, for example, they have it much worse than the African continent and even the other BRICS countries, but still putting it into perspective, the economic growth rate does need to be higher than the population growth rate. And that's simply not the case in South Africa specifically. It's gone 23 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. This is Africa in Business. Remember to continue engaging with us on all our various social media platforms. You'll find us at Channel Africa 1 on X, Instagram and YouTube. And on Facebook, you'll find us at Channel Africa.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine.
I want the Africa that makes every single African proud of the continent and have hope. And there's so much stuff that's going on that's positive. And if we can just lock into that, Namaganjani, everyone is going to get there.
Where are we going? Where are we trying to get to?
The idea of working together, which is why I'm excited about this new voice.
And the new voice is me, Asanda Peta, broadcast journalist with about 15 years of experience on the radio space.
Welcome, Asanda. I've been waiting for you for a long time.
Were you waiting for me?
I was.
Really?
Yeah, because for 3 months I was on my own.
So be sure to tune in right here on Channel Africa Mondays to Fridays from 6 till 9 a.m. Central African time.
If you want to know about your continent, this is the best place to start your day.
Rise and Shine on Channel Africa. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
It is exactly 24 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Now, Kenya's President William Ruto is in Beijing, China, on a 4-day state visit. The Kenyan government says the visit by Ruto will be used to attract more trade, investment and infrastructure opportunities to the East African country. On the sidelines of the state visit, there will be a Kenya-China business forum that brings together over 100 companies from both countries. Ruto is the first African leader to visit China. This is after the announcement of worldwide tariffs by the US President Donald Trump. Joining us this afternoon to unpack this further is Dr. Alex Kamau, a lecturer and business consultant. Doctor, welcome to Africa in Business. Good to have you with us.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
So, Doc, it has been reported that Ruto's visit to China comes just after the Finance Minister, John Mbadi, had just visited China. This is amid ongoing negotiations with the United States about a free trade agreement. Now, is there more to this visit than what meets the eye?
Yes, there's more than meet the eye. And it would be unfortunate if Kenya was to give China a blanket free trade opportunity or advantage, because China is a superpower, is an advanced economy, and Kenya is still trying to develop its industries, and therefore Kenya, what it has done, it has allowed a few Chinese companies to come and set factories here in Kenya, and they will be operating under what we call special economic zones. If a company operates in that region, it is given some special advantages, like a 10-year tax holiday. They are also given government protection and other government incentives, including when it comes to repatriation of profit that company has generated within Kenya, it is not taxed compared to those other multinational firms that are operating within Kenya, but not within the SEZ, that is a special economic zone.
So Kenya has always seen, or rather has always been seen, as having close relations with the United States. Will this China visit by Ruto have any impact on the US-Kenya relations? And this is given the reports that the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, abruptly cancelled a trip to Nairobi as well as Addis Ababa. This is shortly after Ruto left for Beijing.
Yes, as there are likely to be consequences for the choice that Kenya has taken, because when Trump was actually implementing the reciprocal tariff, it was about those countries that are not giving more business to US, and it was about how much is US exporting to you as a country, vis-a-vis how much are we importing as US from that other country. So if Kenya is pro-China, it means that instead of buying so much from US, it will be buying so much from China, and that will adversely affect the trade balance between the two countries, and therefore we are likely to get more higher tariff, because as we speak right now, though the US tax tariffs were suspended, Kenya had been imposed or slapped with the lowest tax rate at 10%. Other countries like South Africa, it was that 4%. We have Lesotho at 50%, and that was basically based on the trade deficit that US had against that particular country. For Kenya, it was more or less a balanced trade. What we export and vis-a-vis what we import from US is balanced.
Let's take a look at the debt that Kenya has. There were some fears a couple of days ago, some concerns that Kenya might default on its debt to China. The country owes 63% of its bilateral debt to China. Now, we have seen Beijing cancelling some of the debt owed to it by some African countries and some African states. Is China likely to cancel Kenya's debt in order maybe to gain favour with the country?
I don't think so. I don't think so. The reason is because as we speak, Kenya, as we speak, the China has advanced money to almost every other nation in Africa. So if Kenya is given that special treatment, then we are likely to see other countries, African countries, pushing for the same favor. And therefore, I don't see maybe the best that Kenya can get as at now, because it is one of the items on the table is a restructuring of the loan facility. And restructuring basically would mean if we had agreed we pay you a debt within 10 years, is it possible that you extend that period from 10 to 15 years? If you had given us a rate of about 10% as interest rates per annum for the debt that we owe you, can you perhaps make it 7%? So that is also something that President Ruto will be putting on the table to see whether his recommendations would be accepted by the Chinese government.
So there is also going to be a signing of an agreement with China, between Kenya and China, to construct a foreign affairs complex. Could you tell us more about this, as well as what the timelines for this project are, and perhaps what the ticket price is? How much is all this going to cost?
What I understand was one of the requests that the Kenyan government wanted to make is basically actually the extension of standard gauge railway that China had facilitated in funding in 2014, and it came from a town called Mombasa up to Naivasha. And now the government of Kenya has been very passionate in wanting to have the SGR, that is the standard gauge railway, extended from Naivasha to Kisumu. Kisumu is still in Kenya, and later on the same line to be extended to Malaba. Malaba is a border town between Uganda and Kenya. That's one of the projects that President Ruto is very passionate about. The other one is a road that connects Nairobi as the headquarters of Kenya to the western part of the country. That is, there's a road called Nakuru Eldoret Highway, and Kenya President Ruto is passionate in ensuring that it is expanded and it is widened, because every other time Kenyans are going for festive season in the rural areas, there's usually very tight traffic jam, and therefore the government is very particular in sourcing for funding for expansion of that particular highway.
All right, Dr. Alex Kamau, thank you so much for taking us through the Kenya-China visit, as well as all the various aspects that are likely to be discussed during William Ruto's visit to China, as well as the East African countries Kenya-China Business Forum that's currently taking place with over 100 companies from both of the countries. We thank you for your time, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's Dr. Alex Kamau. He's a lecturer and business consultant. It takes us to exactly 4:33 Central African time. Let's take a look now at the latest financial indicators with Nosipho Zuma.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami. Good afternoon. In your business news this hour, one US dollar is trading at 18.62 in South Africa, and Botswana is trading at 13.60. Namibia is trading at 18 Namibian dollars 62. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 28 kwacha 44 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 88. In Ethiopia, it is trading at 132 birr 29. In Uganda, it is trading at 3,000 shilling 643. In Tanzania, it is trading at 2,000 shillings 678. One US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 602. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 50 Egyptian pound 88. In Tunisia, it is trading at 2 dinar 96. In Algeria, it is trading at 131 dinar 35. The Moroccan dirham is trading at 9.19 to the US dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 9.12 kwanza 17, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,853 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, the gold is trading at $3,285 and platinum at $968 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $66.87 a barrel. For Channel Africa Business, I'm Nosipho Zuma.
business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And standing by for your latest from the world of sport, a very good afternoon to you, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Thami. Good afternoon. And we begin with athletics in Kenya. Sharon Lokedi of Kenya won the women's pro race at the Boston Marathon in 2 hours, 17.22 seconds, the fastest time ever on the course by more than 2 minutes. Lokedi, who is sponsored by Under Armour and trains with the Arizona-based UA Mission Run Dark Sky Distance team, will be paid handsomely. To break down for us, how much will she ultimately get for her exploits? We say good afternoon to our Kenyan correspondent, Francis Mutegi. Francis, good afternoon. Take us through about how much has Sharon Lokedi earned for her victory in Boston.
Good afternoon to you, Figile. My name is Francis, as you said. Yes, indeed, it is a huge achievement for Lokedi, because that is something that is going to be quite some shake in the bank account that she owns. And that is to say that she expects to earn a minimum of $150,000 US dollars. And that will be for the victory that she managed in the Boston Marathon yesterday. And of course, now, because she also cleared and broke the course record by more than 2 minutes to finish in 2 hours, 17 minutes and 22 seconds. That is to say, she's also going to earn an extra $50,000 US dollars, and that is making it $200,000 US dollars. And if you look at that in South African rand, probably you're talking of something close to 4.24 million South African rand. In Kenyan shillings, you're talking about close to 26 million shillings. That is 25.88 around there. And that is quite some huge sum of money indeed, straight from victory and the course record that she has put. And in this case, therefore, you also got to think about she's got other endorsements from various sponsors. From, let's say, if she has a sponsorship from the likes of Nike or Adidas, or she's got endorsements from the athletics companies, as well as other entities that make jerseys and the like, then she's got quite some chunk of money to collect as well from those ones, besides that amount that I'm talking about of 200,000 United States dollars. And so you're imagining this could be clocking to 30 million Kenya shillings, or so to say 5 million South African rand. And that is to say you're talking about 250,000 US dollars, if at all these endorsements and other sponsors who are supporting her cause in athletics for the years that she's been there, because she lives in the United States, by the way. She's based there in Kansas City, in the Kansas University, where she's been studying nursing and business. And since this course record was broken after almost 10 years, because it was 2014, then you're imagining that she's got quite some endorsements who will make this money bigger than it is. And so you can imagine something close to 250,000 US dollars, and that is, we're talking about maybe 5 million rand or 30 million Kenya shillings, and that is going to be some huge money figure to put in your account.
Okay,
course,
Francis.
There are costs that come with it, the likes of taxation and things like that. Of course, there is the entry fee that she's going to get as well. It is quite some money indeed.
Well, does this achievement of her and other athletes help Athletics Kenya to receive a better budget from the government yearly?
Absolutely. It is going to be, of course, it is some sort of endorsement for athletics as a sport in Kenya. And for that reason, you expect that the government of Kenya, when it comes to allocations to various federations, they will always consider athletics as a priority, because it is one of those sports that are likely to bring quite some income for the country, besides the likes of other football, like rugby, that is also doing very well, especially the sevens rugby. You've got also to imagine there are people in other fields like boxing, swimming, and so on. But athletics will always lead the cause and beyond even the likes of football in terms of the amount of money you expect for such victories by Kenyan athletes. And so the federation benefits in a way. Of course, the government doesn't do so much for federations. They tend to operate almost independently, and for that reason, they don't expect a lot of money in terms of allocations in the budget, but they get support in terms of, for example, if they are sending athletes for Olympics, for World Championships, or other international events, including African Championships, then they tend to get more allocations in terms of slots of the number of athletes who are traveling to do athletics specifically, because they've got more prospects for the country and, for that matter, more prospects for the team to win something in the event.
Francis, thank you so much for your time. That's our Kenyan correspondent, Francis Mutegi. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
You'll find us on all the various social media platforms on X, Instagram and YouTube. You'll find us at Channel Africa 1. And on Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. If you have any stories that you believe would be of interest to our listeners around the world, both on the African continent and beyond, you can send us an email with your story leads to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za.
Vue d'Afrique avec Joël Mouteba. Sadio, quelles sont les motivations derrière la décision du général Mamadi Doumbouya d'accorder la grâce présidentielle à Moussa Dadis Camara?
Alors, officiellement ici, c'est pour des raisons de santé, et puis le décret aussi a ajouté que c'est dans un élan de réconciliation nationale et c'est un cas social. Mais au-delà de ça, les analystes ils voient sous un angle politique. Les moins critiques estiment que c'est pour peut-être faciliter un petit peu la réconciliation que pourrait tenter aujourd'hui le CNSD.
Vue d'Afrique. Du lundi au vendredi de 15h à 16h, temps universel.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 4:42 Central African Time. Invest in African Energy Forum, otherwise known as IAE, is scheduled to take place in Paris, France in about a month's time. Now, the event brings together the global investment community and showcases Africa's most dynamic energy and infrastructure projects. IAE 2025 is set to put a spotlight on Africa's resurgence in exploration activity, with over 150 oil and gas blocks on offer across more than 10 countries on the continent. For more on this, we joined on the line by the account executive at Energy Capital and Power, Kaltuma Nase. A very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, madam. Hello, everyone.
Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
So when we look at the
pleasure is all mine.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, when we look at the continent, it has 50 oil and gas blocks on offer. And this is across 10 different countries on the continent, with traditional financial institutions restricting fossil fuel lending. How have they managed to attract funding to explore these oil and gas blocks?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, IAE Forum stands out because it goes beyond just being a conference. It's a targeted business platform designed to connect global capital with concrete African energy opportunities. We're talking about strong institutional backing from governments, regulators, and national oil companies to this forum across the continent, which makes it a trusted and action-oriented environment. So the forum taking place on the 13th and 14th of May features exclusive deal rooms, licensing round presentations, and high-level ministerial participation, all of which drive real-time investment decisions.
So the Invest in African Energy Forum does serve as a platform to cultivate new sources of capital. Which are the areas of funding that are being looked into?
Well, through the Premier Invest Deal Room, for example, we provide a private sit-in where vetted investors can engage directly with governments and NOCs to explore specific blocks and projects. And we're talking about the oil and gas sector, the African oil and gas sector here. The goal is to reduce uncertainty and accelerate the decision-making process. So we're having a high-level representation from different countries, North Africa, West Africa, East Africa, and Central Africa as well, that are coming to the Paris event to promote and advocate for their projects.
And how is the forum itself promoting the role of diversified energy investment in Africa's energy security, industrialization, and energy transition specifically?
Well, IAE places the gas at the heart of its agenda as a strategic bridge between Africa's development goals and global climate objectives, talking about the energy transition strategy here. Through the spotlight sessions, investor briefings, and case studies, we highlight gas monetization projects such as the Congo LNG, the Bori gas utilization project in Libya as well, and infrastructure developments across East and West Africa. We also provide a platform for governments to present their gas master plans on demonstrating how gas can power industry, reduce emissions, and expand access to electricity across the continent. Example given here would be for Angola, for example, a great one. The forum actually actively supports positioning the gas as a reliable, scalable, and transitional energy source for Africa.
So 2 weeks ago, Kaltuma, we saw the Angola government get into a production sharing contract with the Nigerian energy firm Walcott Group. It's something that we actually covered here on Africa in Business as well. How key is the Invest in Africa Energy Forum in facilitating partnerships of this nature?
This is a very good question, actually. I'm just going to take another example here. For example, we have Liberia and Sierra Leone who have developed and adopted, adopted direct negotiation frameworks, for example, supported by open access to seismic data and simplified licensing terms. You mentioned Angola, obviously, because also they have implemented a more investor-friendly fiscal regime while digitalizing its contract process. And these digital systems and policy reforms reduce red tape and minimize room for opacity, which allows faster evaluations and approvals, which creates a transparent environment that builds investor confidence and reduce entry barriers, especially for independents and junior explorers who are also well represented in the forum Invest in African Energy this year.
Well, this year's forum is said to be a bit of a milestone moment for upstream investment on the African continent. How so?
Well, definitely, we're talking African countries are more than ready for in 2025 with 150 blocks across more than 10 African countries that are up for offer in 2025. So the forum actually this year for its third edition is going to be a very good opportunity and an exclusive opportunity for these countries and for these NOCs as well to advocate for these projects and move forward. As I said in the beginning, this forum in Paris is beyond being just a conference. It's a targeted business platform. It's about delivering results and accelerating partnerships on the ground, not just about discussions. It's about a real-time investment decisions, and this is what we are pushing forward for.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Kaltuma. So this IAE takes place in about a month. Can you give us more details?
Yes, so obviously, thank you very much too. This Invest in African Energy is the third edition this year on the 13th and 14th of May 2025 in Paris, Les Salons Hoche. And it's going to take place in 2 days where we were going to have the delegates enjoy multiple networking sessions and exclusive networking sessions, and we're going to have also, as I mentioned, premier investing room, and also multiple countries coming in to deliver presentations on the blocks and the investment opportunities available in these countries in Africa.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and wishing you all the best for IE 2025.
Thank you very much, madam, for having me. And thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. That's Account Executive at Energy Capital and Power, Kaltuma Nase. She takes us to exactly 10 minutes to 5 p.m.
From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
South African Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago has suggested narrowing the agenda and establishing better processes for the G20 for it to reclaim its impact. Kganyago delivered the keynote address at an event in Washington for the 2025 spring meetings of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, alongside the G20 finance track ministers and the central bank governors meeting. He says by streamlining priorities, the meetings will be solutions-driven dialogue and help navigate the current global challenges. This report by Nosipo Khatebe.
Reserve Bank Governor Lesetja Kganyago has emphasized the importance of the G20 as a platform for economic cooperation, addressing those gathered at the Brookings Institute discussion on strengthening global economic cooperation for a changing world, the unique role of the G20. Kganyago took the opportunity to highlight this point.
The G20 has demonstrated its value during crises, most notably at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, where it served as a central forum for coordinating responses and mobilizing finance. It has strengthened the global financial safety net with a better resourced International Monetary Fund at its center, and has facilitated expanded resource commitments for the multilateral development banks.
But Kganyago says once we're no longer in the throes of a crisis, it becomes harder to find purpose.
When we say, for instance, that the G20's relevance is fading, I think we mean that the agenda, always rich in topics, is overloaded and too complex. While there are many agenda items suitable for recent technocratic discussions, such as improving payment systems or helping heavily indebted poor countries, the G20 cannot effectively address itself to all of them.
The governor drew attention to the need for more focused agenda setting, supported by better processes.
Each year we have a new presidency, and each presidency wants to make its mark by putting new issues on the table. This means we add more than we subtract, because the G20 is powerful, is prestigious, and global. It is tempting to bring to it all the problems of the world. It does not follow, however, that just because something is important, it should be on the G20's agenda. There are many important issues for which the G20 is not the right forum.
Meanwhile, speaking at a panel during the same event, Treasury Director General Duncan Pieterse outlined what success would look like for South Africa's G20 presidency.
So I think for us, what success looks like is a situation where there's enough traction on some of the multi-year elements of the G20, and those are being pushed forward, like the MDB reform agenda, but also that we leave some institutional legacy around the continent, its growth and development, and how that translates beyond our presidency into future presidencies as well.
With the changing geopolitical landscape, the importance of the G20 has come into sharp focus. Nosipho Khatebe, SABC News, Johannesburg.
South African Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Solly Malatsi, says South Africa has taken the opportunity to emphasize the need for cross-border collaboration to improve ICT infrastructure and services across Southern Africa. Malatsi says ICT connectivity can be the catalyst to change the region's trajectory. Take a listen to the Minister's conference opening remarks.
And as we come together over the next 3 days to discuss various matters, I encourage all of us to remain focused on the very human impact of our work and our collective potential to improve the lives of millions of our fellow countrymen and women who remain locked out of the digital connectivity. I am pleased to note that the deliberations that will take place throughout the next 3 days also include how we connect the SADC region, both regionally and internationally, through ICT infrastructure and services. At a time where isolationism is taking place globally, it is encouraging that the topic of cross-border collaboration remains central to our regional agenda. At a time where the world seems to be pulling apart, it is equally encouraging that we are choosing to stay connected on connectivity. So we are grateful for the SATA leadership for providing this platform to ensure that we can pursue our shared goals and pursue this purposeful progress that is partly the theme of this gathering.
That was the South African Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Solly Malatsi. He was addressing there the delegates at the Southern Africa Telecommunications Association's 45th conference. It's gone exactly 4 minutes to 5 p.m. Central African time as we wrap up Africa in Business. Let's see what Joël has in store for us. And Vue d'Afrique, bonjour Joël.
Bonjour Thami, bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa et particulièrement de Vue d'Afrique. Alors sur Vue d'Afrique aujourd'hui, il sera question de la justice ivoirienne qui ordonne la radiation du candidat du PDCI Tidjane Thiam. Mais aussi nous parlerons d'une grève de 4 jours qui paralyse le secteur éducatif sur l'ensemble du territoire camerounais, mais encore pour les 3 grands titres, un haut responsable politique d'Afrique du Sud sous les projecteurs d'actualité pour avoir rendu visite à un pasteur qui s'est réfugié au Malawi. Les détails, c'est tout à l'heure dans la grande actualité de Vue d'Afrique. Merci de rester connecté. Merci Thami.
Merci beaucoup, Joël. Joël coming up just after 5 p.m. with Vue d'Afrique, and at the top of the hour, your French news. From myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the entire Africa in Business team, including our producer, Mabo Boloka, as well as our technical and social media team, you have yourself a splendid evening further. Do stand by for the French news coming up at 5 p.m.
Vue d'Afrique, un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa. Rendez-vous du lundi au vendredi avec Joël Mouteba sur Channel Africa de 15h à 16h, temps universel. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Bonjour à tous et excellentes conditions à l'écoute de Canal Afrique, la perspective africaine de l'information qui émet depuis nos studios d'Auckland Park de Johannesburg en Afrique du Sud. Je suis Joël Mouteba à la présentation et tout de suite, voici les principaux. La justice ivoirienne ordonne la radiation du candidat du PDCI, Tidiane Thiam, de la liste électorale, l'empêchant ainsi de prendre part à la présidentielle du 25 octobre en Côte d'Ivoire. Une grève de 4 jours paralyse le secteur éducatif sur l'ensemble du territoire camerounais. Et enfin, pour les grands titres de ce soir, un haut responsable politique d'Afrique du Sud sous les projecteurs d'actualité pour avoir rendu visite à un pasteur qui s'est réfugié au Malawi après avoir été accusé de viol et d'escroquerie. Voilà donc pour les grands titres dont les détails vous seront donnés dans la partie magazine après le bulletin d'information que nous présente Joël Kabongo. Bonjour Kabongo.
Bonjour Joël.
SABC, actualité. La perspective africaine.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous, bienvenue à cette nouvelle édition. Le président du PDCI, parti ivoirien d'opposition Tidiane Thiam, se dit absolument déterminé à être candidat à la présidentielle de la République. Ce, après que le tribunal de première instance a annoncé sa radiation de la liste électorale. Détail avec Annie Calongé.
Tidiane Thiam a fait ses déclarations ce mercredi 23 avril à travers ses plateformes des réseaux sociaux au lendemain de la décision prise par le tribunal de première instance d'Abidjan de le radier de la liste électorale au motif qu'il a perdu sa nationalité ivoirienne. L'opposant ivoirien, qui qualifie ces décisions juridiquement d'iniques et d'incompréhensibles, a déclaré que plusieurs sondages lui donnent un large avantage face au président sortant Alassane Ouattara. À l'endroit de ses militants, il a promis qu'au deuxième tour de la présidentielle de 2025, les Ivoiriens l'éliront avec 57% des voix contre 41% pour le président sortant, soit plus de 15% d'écart.
Et puis en Guinée, condamné mardi en première instance à la cour d'appel de Conakry, l'opposant Aliouba promet de faire appel. Après une audience tendue, le procureur a requis 5 ans de prison ferme contre Aliouba, poursuivi pour offense et diffamation à l'encontre du président de la transition Mamadi Doumbouya. De nouvelles pièces ont été versées au dossier. D'abord, une vidéo projetée par le ministère public où Aliouba demandait aux dignitaires religieux de briser le silence et prendre leurs responsabilités face aux disparitions. Des journalistes ont été fouillés et intimidés, des membres de corps diplomatiques refoulés. Toutes les conditions étaient réunies pour crisper les procès. Le leader du mouvement démocratique libéral continue de clamer son innocence. Ses avocats demandent sa relaxe pure et simple. Le président sud-africain Cyril Ramaphosa est depuis ce mercredi 23 avril en visite de travail à Maseru au Lesotho. Il a co-présidé la deuxième session de la commission binationale entre l'Afrique du Sud et le Lesotho avec le premier ministre Lesotho. Cette session fait suite à la séance inaugurale qui s'est tenue en septembre 2023. Le but de cette visite pour l'Afrique du Sud est de promouvoir une plus grande solidarité entre le pays à la lumière des changements géopolitiques. Pretoria a par ailleurs souligné au cours de cette visite l'importance et la mise en œuvre d'un projet stratégique d'approvisionnement en eau des hautes terres de Lesotho. L'Union africaine a lancé mardi au Maroc les travaux de la 4e édition de la formation pour les observateurs électoraux de l'Union africaine. Cette formation vise à renforcer la transparence des scrutins organisés en Afrique au regard des nombreuses crises post-électorales auxquelles les continents font face, ainsi que l'explique Parfait Onanga Anyanga, formateur et expert en matière électorale de l'Union africaine.
Avoir
des processus électoraux crédibles. Elle est l'essence même de l'expérience démocratique et dont on sait qu'elle est absolument vitale pour promouvoir et préserver la paix et la sécurité en Afrique. Donc c'est une initiative fondamentale dans un contexte où de plus en plus de pays africains ont embrassé l'expérience démocratique. Il faut s'assurer que ceux qui veilleront à l'exercice démocratique, à la libre expression des populations pour choisir leurs dirigeants, le fassent de la meilleure manière possible avec toute l'expertise requise.
Et nous bouclons par cette information du Mali. Plusieurs dizaines de corps ont été découverts mardi près du camp militaire de Kouala dans la région de Kouliko à l'ouest du pays. La découverte a été faite par des personnes à la recherche de leurs proches arrêtés par l'armée malienne et les paramilitaires de Wagner le 12 avril dernier dans le cercle de Diema, toujours dans la même zone. Fin de cette page d'actualité. Merci de l'avoir suivi.
SABC, actualité. La perspective africaine.
Bienvenue dans la grande actualité de Vue d'Afrique. Merci à tous d'être à l'écoute du www.channelafrica.co.za. Bonjour également à ceux qui nous suivent en direct sur notre chaîne Facebook et YouTube Channel Africa. Merci d'être connectés. Je suis Joël Mouteba et Kato assure la mise en onde de cette édition de Vue d'Afrique. Au Cameroun, la rentrée scolaire du 3e trimestre sous fond d'appel à la grève des enseignants. Les millions d'élèves de la maternelle, du primaire et du secondaire ont repris le chemin de l'école hier. À la suite des congés de Pâques, ce retour des apprenants à l'école coïncide avec le début de la grève des enseignants à la demande de plusieurs de leurs syndicats. Des précisions avec notre correspondant à Yaoundé, Eric Chouake.
Lycée d'Afanoyon, situé dans le sud de Yaoundé, ce matin 23 avril 2025. C'est l'atmosphère des jours ordinaires qui prévaut. Cet enseignant de mathématiques est bien au courant du mot d'ordre de grève lancé par plusieurs syndicats des enseignants qui appellent les seigneurs de la grève à observer un arrêt de travail du 22 au 25 avril 2025.
Pour moi, la période de grève n'est pas indiquée, vraiment. Déjà de 1, nous sommes à la rentrée et beaucoup d'établissements d'enseignement public avaient programmé faire la dernière évaluation cette semaine pour les classes intermédiaires. Ça veut dire, comme par exemple chez moi, ce n'est que la 6e, 5e, 4e et seconde. Et c'est le hasard, parce que pendant les congés, donc, c'est le hasard que la délégation régionale est aussi programmée pour 0 à la même période. Et c'est tombé comme ça. Et bon, je pense qu'une grève à cette période-ci n'aura vraiment pas d'impact, puisque les classes intermédiaires, bon, on ne surveille pas. Les quelques personnels qui seront là vont s'occuper de collecter les copies et vont donner.
Plusieurs enseignants ont déjà achevé les programmes de leur enseignement pour le cours de l'année scolaire en cours. C'est pourquoi notre interlocuteur pense qu'il aurait été plus judicieux d'organiser le mouvement d'humeur pendant la période des examens officiels qui démarre le mois prochain. Cela aurait pu, selon lui, avoir plus d'impact car ces examens concernent tout le monde, des élèves des écoles du public comme ceux du privé où sont scolarisés la plupart des enfants des personnalités de la classe moyenne et qui en ce moment poursuivent sereinement leurs études. Le 18 avril 2025, plusieurs syndicats d'enseignants regroupés au sein du collectif des organisations des enseignants du Cameroun, COREC en abrégé, ont lancé un appel à 4 jours de grève des enseignants à compter la rentrée du 3e et dernier trimestre de l'année fixé le 22 avril 2025. À Yaoundé et dans le reste du pays, le mot d'ordre dénommé « école morte » est peu suivi, même si Gabriel Michel Choudiem, un des porte-parole du collectif des syndicats, estime qu'il est encore trop tôt pour donner une appréciation.
Nous ne saurons parler d'échec de la grève puisque nos collègues sont effectivement en grève. Certains sont à la maison, d'autres à l'école ou au campus, mais n'y enseignent pas du tout. L'évaluation de la grève se fera vendredi, qui est le dernier jour. Nous n'avons jamais caché ce que nous voulons. Nous avons toujours exposé, n'est-ce pas, sur la place publique toutes nos revendications, parmi lesquelles la date de la tenue du Forum national de l'éducation, la signature du décret d'application du statut spécial des enseignants, les problèmes des animateurs pédagogiques, la signature de la convention collective de l'enseignement privé, l'OBC, les maîtres des parents que nous appelons communément les enseignants vacataires. Il faut également ajouter le fait que le gouvernement tarde à résoudre intégralement les arriérés de salaire de nos collègues, les rappels des primes d'évaluation, les primes de technicité, les rappels des primes d'intégration, ainsi de suite. La date de la grève est plutôt bien choisie puisque cette grève pourra reprendre le 18 mai prochain si rien n'est fait par le gouvernement.
Plusieurs membres du gouvernement camerounais et leaders syndicaux s'étaient retrouvés dans la capitale le 27 mars 2025 pour examiner les principales revendications des syndicats des enseignants. La rencontre n'avait débouché que sur de vagues promesses du gouvernement, d'où la grève des enseignants en cours. Eric Chouake, Yaoundé, Channel Africa, Actualité.
Hey there, this is Balisa Tau, part of the dynamic duo that gives you On the Move right here on Channel Africa from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Africa time. Well, it's with your help for the past 2 years that we have been a multi-award winning show.
Finally, here we're keeping it on the move in 2025. And yes, I'm the other half of the duo, Benjamin Mushatama, and we're going to keep you going with the great conversations. Turn it up.
Okay. On the Move comes back in 2025 to give you more of the content that made us a Maldo and to deliver that bold, boundary-pushing content that you love. And of course, giving you a ride through the 3 hours of news, views, and entertainment.
Every weekday from 9 to midday Central African time, right here on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Cool.
Let's go.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Moreno Samo e João Yabalá.
O surto da cólera em Angola tem causado grande preocupação, afetando já mais de metade das províncias do país. Simultaneamente, a Agência dos Estados Unidos para o Desenvolvimento Internacional, USAID, um dos maiores doadores mundiais de assistência humanitária, decidiu não priorizar os países com maior incidência de malária. Para discutirmos as causas do alastramento da cólera em Angola e os impactos dessa decisão da USAID, convidamos o Dr. Jeremias Agostinho, médico e mestre em saúde pública, para partilhar a sua visão sobre o tema.
A doença, nesse momento, representa o maior risco de saúde pública que nós temos. Nos últimos anos, a nossa preocupação esteve sempre centrado com os casos de malária, os casos de tuberculose e também de infecção por VIH-Sida. A forma como, em pouco menos de 2 meses, os casos de cólera vêm aumentando, acaba por representar, nessa altura, um dos maiores desafios que o país tem. É expectável que, nesta fase, o número de casos venha a aumentar.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África.
Je l'annonçais en grand titre, le président du principal parti d'opposition ivoirien, le PDCI-RDA, Tidjane Thiam, a affirmé mardi qu'il n'accepterait pas sa radiation de la liste électorale provisoire décidée par la justice ivoirienne à 6 mois de la prochaine présidentielle. En effet, le tribunal de première instance d'Abidjan a décidé ce mardi de radier M. Thiam, estimant qu'il avait perdu la nationalité ivoirienne lorsqu'il a acquis la nationalité française en 1987 suite à 150 requêtes déposées contre lui. Né en Côte d'Ivoire, il a obtenu la nationalité française en 1987 et y a renoncé en mars dernier afin de se présenter à la présidentielle, un scrutin pour lequel un candidat ne peut être binational. Mais ses détracteurs évoque l'article 48 du Code de la nationalité qui indique que l'acquisition d'une autre nationalité entraîne la perte de la nationalité ivoirienne. Et pour en parler, nous sommes en ligne avec notre correspondant Célé Marius Kouassi depuis Abidjan. Bonjour Célé.
Bonjour à tous et à toutes.
Alors Célé, le procès s'est-il déroulé dans le respect des principes du contradictoire et de la transparence en dépit du huis clos imposé ?
Alors, c'est le lieu de dire que la restriction de ce procès, la restriction du public lors de ce procès, continue de susciter plusieurs préoccupations et des interrogations quant au principe même du respect du contradictoire. Le huis clos, comme on l'entend dire un peu partout dans les rues d'Abidjan, peut généralement limiter l'accès à certaines informations essentielles et entraver une véritable défense. Et ce qui fait que plusieurs observateurs estiment que cela a dû nuire à la crédibilité de la procédure, comme pour dire qu'il aurait été souhaitable que ce procès-là ne se fasse pas à huis clos. Alors, vous pouvez comprendre donc aisément que cette manière de conduire le procès a dû certainement déteindre sur la volonté de transparence de ce procès-là, qui n'est pas forcément partagée dans l'opinion publique en ce moment.
On va revenir à l'opinion publique, mais avant, sur quels éléments concrets le juge s'est-il fondé pour affirmer que Tidiane Thiam avait effectivement perdu sa nationalité ivoirienne?
Jusqu'ici, les détails très précis sur la raison de la perte de sa nationalité ivoirienne par Tidiane Thiam n'ont pas été largement, je vais dire, divulgués par la juge, ce qui alimente des doutes sur la rigueur de ces éléments et sur la décision rendue par la justice. La juge a estimé que Tidiane Thiam a perdu la nationalité ivoirienne. Quand il a acquis la nationalité française, elle s'est appuyée notamment sur l'article 48 du Code de la nationalité, qui stipule qu'un Ivoirien majeur perd la nationalité ivoirienne au bout de 15 ans s'il acquiert volontairement une autre nationalité. Alors, on peut dire donc que la juge a probablement pris en compte des documents administratifs ou des déclarations officielles attestant que Tidiane Thiam avait acquis une nationalité étrangère, ce qui, selon les Ivoiriens, le code de la nationalité peut entraîner la perte de la nationalité. Alors, à propos, les avocats de Tidiane Thiam, ils ont tenté de prouver que leur client est né français et que donc cette disposition du code de la nationalité ne s'appliquait pas à lui. Ils ont affirmé du moins avoir présenté les documents administratifs allant dans ce sens. Et mais donc là, nous sommes toujours dans l'attente de la suite que pourrait prendre cette affaire.
Mais cette décision de justice, pour revenir justement à l'opinion publique, cette décision est-elle perçue par l'opinion comme une manœuvre politique? Je veux dire, est-ce que le camp présidentiel est soupçonné d'avoir exercé une influence sur la procédure?
Oui, et bien éventuellement, pour parler d'opinion publique, on peut parler d'une opinion publique qui est divisée. Il y a d'une partie beaucoup dans l'opinion publique Pour parler de l'opinion publique, on dirait qu'il y a beaucoup de personnes qui considèrent cette décision comme une manœuvre politique visant à éliminer un adversaire jugé sérieux, un adversaire coriace. Des suspicions donc qui pèsent sur le camp présidentiel quant à une possible influence sur la justice, toute chose qui renforce l'idée que la procédure a été très certainement instrumentalisée à des fins politiques. Et puis vous avez d'autre part des personnes proches du camp présidentiel qui estiment que la justice n'a jusque-là fait que son travail, sans émission forcément du politique, en se basant sur les éléments qu'elle a pu obtenir de la partie plaignante.
Donc c'est la réaction du camp présidentiel face aux accusations d'élimination par voie judiciaire d'un opposant politique?
Le camp présidentiel a depuis lors nié toute intention d'éliminer politiquement Tidiane Thiam et a qualifié ces accusations de complot infondé. Ce camp soutient d'ailleurs que la justice suit son cours normalement et qu'aucun acte, n'est-ce pas, malveillant n'est en jeu pour disqualifier qui que ce soit de la course au fauteuil présidentiel, fût-il Tidiane Thiam ou Laurent Gbagbo ou encore Charles Blé Goudé ou Premier ministre et par ailleurs ex-président de l'Assemblée nationale Soro Guillaume. Donc c'est ce narratif-là que le camp présidentiel entretient, essaie de diffuser et qu'il a en face de lui un autre narratif qui prend le contre-pied de ces arguments-là pour affirmer que la justice est inféodée au pouvoir RHDP, le Rassemblement des Oufoutistes pour la démocratie et la paix, le parti du président Alassane Ouattara.
Et on a aussi un Tidiane Thiam qui semble très déterminé à se battre. Est-ce que sa vidéo, dans laquelle il s'adresse à la population, a modifié ou renforcé l'opinion publique à son égard?
Alors, pour le dire, il faut clairement faire un sondage. Ce qu'on peut dire, en tirer comme leçon jusque-là, c'est que cette vidéo, ou du moins la diffusion de cette vidéo, a permis à Tidiane Thiam de renforcer son image d'opposant déterminé face à la justice, à ce qu'il qualifie d'injustice, ce qui fait que beaucoup de ses partisans ont salué son discours comme un appel à la résistance, toute chose qui a également suscité un soutien beaucoup plus accru en rapport avec la perception de la pression politique qu'il subit. Donc, c'est un avantage, c'est à son avantage, il a dû capitaliser ça. Quelqu'un qu'on estime de pas très bavard, qui n'affronte pas les choses de façon très frontale, mais qui est dans une vidéo, il se dit déterminé à combattre toutes sortes d'injustices et à être candidat. Ça a certainement dû accroître son capital popularité auprès des sectes qui sont très proches de lui.
Mais est-ce que cette décision risque de démobiliser l'électorat du PDCI ou au contraire de renforcer la cohésion et la détermination autour de la figure de Tidiane Thiam?
Disons tout de suite oui et non à la fois. Cette décision pourrait potentiellement renforcer donc la détermination des partisans du PDCI, le parti de Tidiane Thiam. Au lieu de les démobiliser, elle pourrait catalyser les mouvements de solidarité autour de lui et accentuer l'unité du parti face aux défis partagés. L'envers de la médaille, c'est qu'elle pourrait faire croire à certaines personnes, certains membres du PDCI, qu'il faudrait peut-être penser à un autre candidat ou à un autre scénario ou à un autre plan B ou plan C, parce que celui en cours ne pourrait ne pas marcher. Donc, c'est un couteau à double tranchant, on a envie de dire.
Justement, parlons de ça. Si un autre candidat devait être proposé, qui au sein du PDCI pourrait incarner une alternative crédible à Tidiane Thiam?
Alors, le PDCI s'enorgueillit de présenter plusieurs personnalités. La question qui reste à savoir, c'est est-ce que toutes ces personnalités ont le profil de Tidiane Thiam? C'est une question qui reste posée. Sinon, parmi les figures, je vais dire, du PDCI, on a des personnalités comme Maurice Kakugikawe, comme l'ex-ministre Amani Yao, il y a plusieurs personnalités, je veux dire. Maintenant, le profil de Tidiane Thiam, là, ça reste discutable parce que la plupart de ces personnalités-là ont une expérience qui ne parle pas très au-delà des frontières ivoiriennes. On les connaît beaucoup plus localement.
Doit-on conclure, Célé, qu'il reste quelques options désormais au PDCI, donc soit engager une négociation, soit contester juridiquement la décision, ou soit se tourner vers un autre candidat?